Welcome to Dealer Talk with Jen Suzuki, where inspiration meets action. This is your spot to grow, level up, and lead with fresh ideas. From sales to service, from frontline teams to executives, we're dropping weekly knowledge and insight to keep your store sharp, relevant, and profitable. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody. Today's guest is somebody that I've known, somebody I've respected for many years, John Inman. He's the CEO of McCurley Dealerships, and they have 6 solid dealerships, and these are not small dealerships. These are very big dealerships. I've seen their properties. And he has spent nearly 3 decades helping lead one of the most respected dealership organizations in the Pacific Northwest, and he's known for his commitment to customers and his community, and really this operational excellence. This is why we know each other, because he's always trying to find a way to level up his team. And I always appreciate people that believe in people. I like his leadership. I love how vulnerable he has been with me to say, hey, you know, we're in a shakeup. We're in a moment. We got to change some stuff. We got to make some big moves. So tell me about this, John. And first, welcome to my show.
Hey, Jen, thank you so much. And those kind words, man, I tell you what, it has been a little while. We've been working together. And
long time.
It is a pleasure to be on with you and with your listeners, just to talk about leadership and the changes that are going on in our environments out in the auto world. It is crazy right now. You know, the things that we're having to deal with today versus what we dealt with 20 and 30 years ago are completely different. But it still boils down to the same things, right? It's about building the right teams, you know, having the right leadership in the stores, building the right teams from the bottom up. It's what making success today looks like. You can't get through all of the changing landscape without great teams. And so that's what we're working on right now. You know, in each store, every part of our organization, we're just looking at our teams and trying to help support them in every way we can.
Okay. Well, tell me, listen, everybody is always navigating change. If there's one thing I know, something's got to change. And it's hard to change. It's one of the most difficult things to do. Is we can learn all of these new systems and processes, and we can hire new people, and we can expand and grow. But one of the biggest challenges out there is executing. And you can learn all this stuff, but then being able to execute something that is new, it's different, it doesn't always feel comfortable, is probably one of the most difficult things to do. And then stay consistent about it. How is retail changing for you right now, where you are faced against this right here, this problem right here? What are some of these changes? What does it look like for you to take them head on? What is it like for you to be vulnerable and say, you know what? We're not great at this. You know what? We need to shake some stuff up. You know what? We're not doing it the old ways.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you there's a number of different places that we're seeing this. I read an article this morning about Carvana. And I know a lot of the listeners out there probably are familiar with Carvana and you know, their used car prowess and what they've done in the marketplace over the last several years.
Astounding.
They are phenomenal.
Remarkable.
What they've done is it can be inspiring and intimidating at the same time.
Totally.
Right? I mean, you look at it as a competitor and it's pretty scary. You know, we can see what they're doing in Phoenix right now. Yeah. They've taken one of the more low performing stores that's out there in the marketplace and made it the #1 store for a Chrysler Dodge Jeep store in the nation within a very short period of time. And how do they do it? Well, they introduced AI into their system. They introduced their AI system, their proprietary AI system, into the marketplace, and they've just absolutely crushed it. So what does that mean for guys like me who've been selling cars for 30 years and are used to the traditional approach to everything we do with the customer? Well, we need to adapt. We need to change. We need to be open to looking at different types of approaches to make the customer's experiences frictionless, give them the opportunity to be followed up with and to be, worked with, not just with people, but with AI. And that can be intimidating because, you know, we're still trying to figure out. I've probably been on, 100 different AI pitch decks in the last year, right? Trying to look at what works, what doesn't work. If your listeners could ping me and just let me know, hey, what's working for you, that'd be great. But you know, that's what we're doing. We're just trying to vet every single vendor that's out there and look at the different opportunities, because here's what I know. AI is working. It's working quickly for us. It's working quickly for the consumers. And we need to be on the front of that wave and not on the back of that wave as it comes to, big challenges that we see in our industry, especially in fixed operations. I know you have a passion for that, but boy, I tell you what, you can get a lot of leverage on different things when it comes to fixed operations and AI. It's incredible.
So how do you talk to your guys about stuff like this? Because listen, Carvana is one thing, and I hear what you're saying. It's it is intimidating. It's invigorating all in the same breath. And you want to be able to take some lessons and you want to hear how you can use some of this process, some of this knowledge to impact your own organization, your own team members. I wonder how you do that. And then you spark this idea for me where it's like, okay, listen, I'm going into fix ops. I see AI working, but listen, there's a lot of old school guys and girls. Okay. But there's just a lot of old school mindsets, legacy thinkers, and they don't. I've run across it a zillion times, particularly in fixed ops, where we got someone's in place that's been there for 2-3 decades and they are anti-AI. What are you going to do? They are a high performer. They are bringing their A game. Everyone loves them, trusts them, but they are not getting on board with this thing. What are you going to do?
But I tell you what, I have a real life example of that happening right now. So we just introduced for the first time in our organization an AI technology that is a CRM we're utilizing for all of our employees. We have certain people that were pretty put off by the fact that AI was going to be placed into the CRM and following up with their client base. And so
totally
to the point, Jen, where there was huge pushback. Our number one salesperson who sells over 40 units a month in our Chevrolet store said, I don't want this. I don't want it in my CRM. My customers don't want it. Please don't make me do this. And so, we're pretty pliable. We said, okay, listen, if that's what you want to do, then we'll go ahead and deploy AI, but we won't do it within your CRM. Your customers aren't going to get followed up with the same way everybody else's were. I'll let you guess what happened.
Okay.
Other sales department personnel were seeing really good results, and within 15 days, that same person was asking some questions like, "Hey, how does that actually work? How do you follow it? What does it look like?" And so they start to become curious. And so, with those old dogs that I'm one of them, right? With those folks that are challenged by some of the new technologies, sometimes you got to let them see it working around them first, and then let them kind of adopt it at their own pace. And certainly, we don't want them to drag behind, but usually top performers, when they start seeing something happening that works well, they want to grab onto that. And so that's what we're kind of seeing with some of our top performers is they're saying, man, this is working. I want some of that. So that's my best advice for, how do you get the old dogs to kind of adopt some of this new technology that's out there?
Okay, well, that's nice. That's a very nice approach. And sometimes that is a winning approach, especially when you have people that have been with you for a long time and and all other aspects are seem to be working on all, 8 cylinders. So let me throw this out. So when you were talking about Carvana a little bit, and I saw that you were intrigued about their technology and inspired your own adoption and interest in AI, and I would say an extreme interest. Being able to vet 100 companies in AI is really a feat all by itself. And it is hard to figure out, well, what do we need? What is this? And I love that you're curious, because I think that's the first step into adoption is I'm interested in hearing what this is about. I'm interested in learning more. I'm interested in trying something. And then it's about incorporating your team members. So when you look at new tools such as AI, how do you go about vetting a tool and actually saying, okay, green light, execute? How, because I'm sure we've made many mistakes with other tools in the past.
Sure.
With AI, it's no different. It requires buy-in. It requires people to oversee the processes and not everybody's going to maybe be on board or love it or even know what to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, involving people in the process of that vetting, I think is key, right? So your leadership that are in the store. So I'm not just talking about general managers and above. I'm talking about people that are working on the front line. Yeah, they're the ones that are going to be using these products that know, hey, that isn't going to work, or that seems like something that maybe we could really grab onto. Those are important people to have involved in the process. So we pick some of those folks that are on those front lines to look at these products and say, hey, that seems like it's going to work well for us. Let's take a further look at this and dive into it. And we go through the process like we do with all the softwares that we buy, of vetting them through, getting referrals, asking people that are using their products now, what does this look like for you? Really, like, how long did it take for you guys to install your processes around that software? Because we all know that software is just that. It's a tool to be used. Yeah. And unless you're going to implement all of your other processes around, that software, it's not going to work for you, right? And so,
right.
I don't care how much you think AI is going to sell every brake job in the world to every customer that comes through your service drive. Unless your people are adopting that as a way to do business, right. You're not going to be able to see the results that you want to see. So we just involve frontline people in that process. They know that, we're looking at dozens and dozens of different softwares that are out there. So they're not expecting, that's the one we're going to get right away. We tell them that up front, and they're helping us make some of these decisions. So we think that's critical.
So this is an interesting approach. I quite frankly haven't seen anybody dive in this hard. So I'm curious, because we will come up with an idea. Oh, I heard in my dealer 20 group, incoming calls, use AI to schedule appointments. And next thing you know, plugging it in. But that's kind of a popular tool right now, but there's so many tools that are emerging. And this is the part that I find really interesting, is that you're so curious about what's out there. And it's not necessarily a vetting process. It's more of a, let's hear what this is. Actually being open-minded to hear what something is, because you had to have been to actually experience 100 products at this point, that are doing AI. And I think that it creates a very knowledgeable team that's becoming ultra aware that this is a medium that we are going to use. And it may end up being like something that it's a slow sort of roll into learning what it is, what it can do, trying some products, seeing results, messing around, but you're still learning what's out there, what are the possibilities. And so as you proceed forward, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to get your team members embracing tools of today, AI, for example, and being able to oversee and manage the processes so that it's actually working for you. This is an interesting approach.
Yeah. Well, and that's not where it stops, right? Because when we say AI, what are we talking about, right? Because we could talk about the AI that's embedded in all of the softwares that we're already utilizing. So as releases come out from the DMS that you're using, or the CRM you're using, or whatever other products, and they have AI attached to it, I mean, that's an AI, right? I've got my marketing department using AI every day. They have a tendency to call AI the 80% tool, right? Like, it's created more efficiency and greater production of images and marketing materials than we've ever seen before. But it also creates a whole bunch more work that they have to deal with. And so that's an AI platform that we see oftentimes. So as these generative AIs come into play, and we're working with the different platforms that they're being utilized in, I mean, the governance of this is really important too. So it's not just process, it's also, what kind of company is this that we're teaming up with? What kind of security levels do they have in place? How is this going to affect my tech stack and the security within that tech stack? What I find is that most of the AI companies, along with the rest of the software companies out there, don't want to take any responsibility for the potential breaches of security and those kind of things that are going on. So we oftentimes, out of dozens and dozens of these different AI tools or other softwares that we're looking at, we often run into problems because we can't sign an agreement with them, right? So we're talking to their leadership teams, trying to come to an equal yoke where we're securing our customers' information, our employees' information, our personal information as a company. And a lot of times those deals die there, right? Where we can't enter into an agreement. So we may look at, everybody signs off and everybody's happy with, hey, we really love this AI deal, but we can't sign the agreement. So we see a lot of, oh shoot, that seemed really cool, and we can't do business with them. So we do run into that quite a bit too.
That's good that I feel you on that. I think that that's probably the next big thing to emerge, and conversations certainly happening at the NADA and the Academy and in the 20 groups that I'm associated with. It's definitely a big topic. And I just, so, okay. in thinking about past leadership and thinking about current leadership, new tools, old mistakes, new mistakes, all of these things, what would you say separates managers, okay, that you work with that become exceptional leaders versus the ones that don't quite make that jump?
Yeah.
What are these qualities? And I wonder, because I kind of feel like it fits in here.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Well,
What do you think?
I think the number one thing is adaptability, and you probably could have guessed that, right? Like, so at the
Yeah.
end of the day, people that were extremely successful in writing service 20 years ago, if they're able to, in today's environments, adapt to some of these changing things that are going on, we see a lot of success. If you put the customer first in everything, right, and you say, listen, we use this term a lot in my organization, trying to become frictionless, right? Trying to become easy to do business with in every aspect. So whether it's in our parts department, sales departments, the service department, in any way, how do we make doing business with us easy, more convenient for the client? And that's not what we were doing 20 years ago. The traditional, let's take the sales process as an example. The traditional sales process has changed completely from what it looked like 20 years ago to today. Well, that person that was 20 years ago selling vehicles, if they don't adapt and they're not, dealing with leads differently, and they're not, selling differently, meeting customers where they're at when they come onto the property, they're not seeing success. So we talk a lot about, hey, listen, you got to be adaptable. What worked for you 5, 10, 20 years ago isn't going to work for you today. So let's take some of the best parts of what you were doing before, and let's look at how that dovetails into what's working today.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that AI has some impact here too, because let's face it, a lot of customers, and you may not be seeing it frequently, but they are starting to occur where customers are coming in with GPT deals, I call them, they're using GPT to help them navigate negotiating the best car deal. And if your sales team members, let alone your management, isn't on board with AI or even understanding it, we can lose deals alone just because they're not willing to play the game.
Yeah, for sure. And boy, I tell you what, I think that having a consumer armed with great information can be one of the toughest things to deal with, or it can be one of the easiest things to deal with, right? And so when we look at it as a positive, that people are coming in with this information and it's helpful, and it brings them along that journey of purchasing a vehicle further and makes the time we spend with them more enjoyable, that's great. When we look at it as a negative, oh my gosh, these people are getting bad information.
Right.
We all know that AI is just spitting out a bunch of bad information and they don't even know what they're talking about. And they're bringing this stuff in. I see people losing when they approach it that way too.
Of course, it angers me to even hear that because it's not true. You're anti, you're fighting it.
Right.
Yeah, and now you're dripping it into our front line. So okay, I have to ask you this, and you might even have this answer yet. So in just talking about like customers coming in with AI straight up in your face, and they have no hesitations. This is what I'm using to negotiate. Well, this is what Gemini says. This is what GPT says. And how have you talked to your managers about this? Like, have you talked to them about what do we do? Or on the other side, and not to just pile on too much here, but these are conversations. And I wonder what your conversations look like and how you lead these conversations, how you take a stance, and how you get them to be embracing this and be consistent amongst multiple stores. But you have customers that are using AI agents and they are having a relationship. Okay. And they were coming in asking by your AI by name, and the salespeople want to like devalue it. Like, oh, that's just our AI. And I'm like, you can't do that. You have to talk about this stuff. So how are you addressing this?
Well, I would be, I don't know. I wouldn't be fully transparent if I said that I had figured this out, right? I mean, so we're new to this, like a lot of the listeners are. Where we're just entering into this place where, and to be 100% transparent, where we're realizing people are coming in armed with that information.
Yeah,
we didn't even know that a year ago. This is new to us, where people were coming in with the information a year ago. We just weren't aware of it. Well, we've just finally become aware of the fact that people have this information in their.
A lot of managers don't even know what it is. Right. They don't use AI.
Yeah, they don't use it on a daily basis. And that is one thing that, we have done for a couple of years now. And this is something that I would recommend for everybody, that if you have management team players that are not using AI, that becomes the first assignment every
Oh
day.
yeah.
I'll check out with some of my direct reports. I have 12 direct reports in the organization. They're high level people in the organization, but I do check out with them on a regular basis and say, hey, what did you utilize AI on today?
Yeah.
Tell me, did you use it to compose a communication with somebody? Did you download a document and review that document using AI? Was there something that you utilized AI with? And if not, let me give you some ideas on how to just approach using it in your day-to-day, workspace. So
Love.
assignment number one, use it twice a day, right? And
Yeah.
if you get people using it, they start to really figure out even, the most,
Potential.
yeah, it's got a ton of potential.
Yeah.
And, then they start to come back to you with things like, AI is really neat, but it doesn't have all the right answers all the time, right? It doesn't answer the questions exactly how I want to answer the questions. And so they start to figure out what AI is, so that when customers come through the door, they know better how to deal with that, right? So obviously AI is not always right. The context matters. What's going on in the conversation with AI, how you taught AI to respond to you, that all matters. So when they bring that information through the door, if you're a user, you can relate to that customer better, right? So you have to actually encourage the use of that product.
Yes. Yeah, that's that. I mean, I like that, and I think it's very simple. It's very doable, and frankly, it's great leadership, and it's leadership maturity, because this is the tool of today. And that if it's you can't just like hit people with like, you have to do this, you have to use this product. But when you start to understand like the ins and outs of how AI actually works and what its capabilities and potential is, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to start finding the holes in your operation, the pain points, and being able to find products that are actually going to fill those pain points specifically, and then get people to actually use the tool in the right way. Hey, switching gears, I remember flying to your stores multiple times, and I just was overwhelmed by some of your fixed ops department sizes. I mean, I'm talking like some of the biggest, they look like big ass sheds, but like the biggest sheds on the planet, where I'm just in absolute awe. Obviously, fixed ops is the backbone of your organization. Based on just size alone, it's pretty astounding and neat. I think it appears that you've invested pretty heavily. What are some of your best service departments doing that's really creating customer loyalty, creating profitability, things that you're noticing that maybe even have had to have changed in order to be able to embrace that many customers when you're growing facilities of that size? Compromising customer experience and employee experiences also can play a role in the success of the outcome. How's this work for you?
Yeah, I think, we had a huge blind spot for the past couple of years. So I think every one of us that are out there running service departments, running, dealership groups, several years ago realized we have a tech shortage, right? We don't have enough technicians. We talk about it at every meeting that we go to. How are we going to find more technicians? How are we going to keep more technicians? They're the most valuable employee in the organization. We've got to make sure that we're taking care of them, pay them more money, do whatever you got to do. Build facilities, right? So we've invested in all of these facilities. We've doubled the number of lifts that we have in our service departments. So we have the capacity to take care of the client. And all of this infrastructure and technician thought kind of blinded us to that customer interaction, which was the very most important thing. And by the way, also selling, right?
Yeah.
So we start to now look at the business and go, man, we've got happy technician teams. We've done some incredible things. Recruiting technicians. We don't have a tech problem in my organization. We have a lot of great technicians. They're happy to be here. They're producing at high levels. What we have our largest issues on this is a selling problem, right? It's a selling problem in the drives. And it doesn't just have to do with the people that are in the drives. They're great people and they're doing a great job. But what it has to do with is there can be system problems, right? So I've got a customer, as an example, sitting in the service drive waiting for their maintenance repair to get done. And so they're doing their oil change, they're rotating the tires, and that inspection gets done. and the video gets popped out to the consumer that's in the lounge, but that process isn't quite ironed out, right? So the customer doesn't actually look at the video while the advisor's wrapping up the repair order. There's no quarter time that's getting executed where there's some selling that's getting done, and so we're checking out the customer and saying, hey, did you get a chance to look at the video? And they say, no, we didn't see the video. Oh, well, shoot, you need brakes, you need tires. We've got a seal that's leaking, and so we've got to do all this stuff. Okay, well, I'm busy. I got to go, right? And
right.
So
timing.
What's the best opportunity we have in our organization for selling something? It's that client that just left, right? But the problem is that advisor, the manager in that drive, they're not, over time, they're not trained in a way that really is going to follow up with that client and sell them that work the way that we would want them to. And that's what we find in our organization anyway. So AI and the usability of AI in that is going to be critical to be able to follow up with people in a non-threatening way, knowing that it's an AI, bot that you're talking to. Hey, these are the things that you didn't do while you were in the service drive the last time. You really should get in. We've got a special buy 3, get 1 free on tires. Why don't we schedule this for you?
Reschedule.
Okay. Now that advisor is getting a hot lead. Hey, this customer wants to come back in. It's on the schedule for this date. These are the things that they're going to do. And the advisor's pumped them, excited about it and doing well. So we didn't pay enough attention to what was going on in the drive, and we were focused completely on the infrastructure and what was going on with technicians. And so now we're catching back up with, okay, we got to become better at selling in the drive. And that's what our big focus is right now.
Yeah, well, that's very honest. And I think if I kind of go back even to the question of, what separates a high performing service department versus an average, I think this is actually a very big moment to pinpoint. And you're not alone. In fact, I was with a very large East Coast group last week, one of the biggest. And you know what their problem is? They're not selling on the drive.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And so even some of our highest performing stores out there are struggling with this too. As you mentioned, we've had a lot of moving parts that needed to be tackled. And you know what has fallen by the wayside is the walk around. The walk around, if you want to sell stuff on the drive, you got to have a solid walk around. And what I'm finding, and I wonder if you feel this too, because it is an area to tighten up on, it is an area of opportunity. But I find that a lot of new hires never even were taught to do a walk around. Wow. And in fact, many new hires were not even trained to call the customer on that MPI to even sell that work.
Right. Yeah, it's incredible too, because we're talking about AI, we're talking about all the technologies that are available to do what we do today. But when it comes down to it, success is really driven off the basics, right? When a customer arrives at your dealership, are you greeting them? Are you doing the walk around on the vehicle?
That's the whole thing.
Are you building the relationship? That hasn't changed in 30 years. That's the same thing as it was 30 years ago, right? So it's but also this, right? We got to do both things. We got to have the technology and we have to have the basics as well.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly said and easy to understand. I mean, the reality is that we have to focus on customer loyalty. So if you're not really smashing that greeting, that exit, those first last impressions and everything in between that makes people feel valued, appreciated, it actually equates to profitability. It equates to great CSI, and they all go hand in hand. But yeah, it's a lot of moving pieces, and it's very honest of you to say, yeah, we need to get better at selling on the drive. And a lot of people could relate to that. I feel that a lot of people have to get better at going back to the basics, like you said. And I just had a guest on an earlier interview who said the same thing. He said he moderates 20 groups, and he says, Jen, I wish I could give you like this big firework formula, but the truth is you need to get back to the basics. And we can all relate to that, right?
Absolutely. And I'm sure he would agree with me, and all of your listeners would agree to me that we really have to look at customers and their lifetime value and build relationships with them. All of that doesn't change because the transaction's changing a little bit, right? And I think there's so much fear in our business that, hey, with all of the AI things and the things that are going on, in this current environment, our people are important. there's nothing more important, right? I
Yeah,
don't see our staffing being reduced. I see it actually increasing and giving customers better experiences, because
me
what's more
too.
important than the customer's lifetime value today, as much as it was 30 years ago? We have to realize that service retention, CRM effectiveness, the use of, the customer experience, equity mining, all of these things, that
Nurture.
lifetime ownership,
Hmm.
that looking at the customers from that perspective is still key.
Yeah. Yeah, we can never really lose sight of that. No matter how many tools you have, that human connection, it's highest priority. Hey, there's a lot of news, a lot of media on pricing transparency and consumer trust out there. And this discussion, that's recently more focused on how we post pricing, dealer advertising practices, and the scrutiny from regulators and consumers out there. As CEO of multiple stores, how do you balance that competitive pricing with maintaining trust? How do you balance it with protecting the customer experience?
Yeah, I think this is one of those CEO calls, right? So
Mhm.
as soon as the FTC came out with that guidance, which was over a year ago, and then
Yeah.
most recently with them going out and sending the letters to the big hundred,
Mhm.
we've taken it very seriously, and we've looked at that and said, listen, competitiveness is important. It's just not as important as doing the right thing by the consumer. Luckily, we're in Washington State. Our Attorney General in Washington State, as it is in many of the states out there, have already had very strict guidelines in terms of pricing transparency and what we're able to do and not do. This FTC guidance it's not earth shattering. It's not changing that much. How
Yeah.
we now display our pricing, where the largest price includes all fees. It's not making that big a difference that we're seeing in dealing with the customer, other than creating transparency and trust, right? And
Yeah.
so we don't look at anything that's going on with the FTC, or what's being held up as, hey, this is going to be a compliance issue, as a big deal. We just
Mhm.
see it as a course of action, and what we're doing, we see it as kind of actually a leveling of the playing field, because I don't think dealers are going to be messing around with the FTC on this thing. If they do, they're going to get burnt. And so
Right.
really, we're all going to be doing the same thing, and I don't think it's going to be a big deal in terms of doing business.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. I feel like you're a little ahead of the curve on this one. And, I've seen all sorts of different ways of pricing, and it's been a customer complaint for a long time. And in fact, it challenges the salespeople and their transparency, their ethics, even their values, because when the next dealer down the street is doing something significantly different and you try to tear them apart, it just makes you look. It's not a good look. It's
Yeah.
just not a good look. And if we can't get on better playing fields, I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is just be clear with people. Everybody has access to extraordinary amounts of information, and what we're trying to do as salespeople is educate customers on the way that we do things. And this is just one more thing to add to that, to create a level of confidence and trust from the people that are keeping us in business, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing I didn't bring up that's
Yeah.
really important to understand about that is that it is easier for the things that we can control to have that pricing transparency. But when you start looking at website providers, third-party lead providers, and all the different places that you have advertising
Post
placed,
prices. Hmm.
your salespeople's social media,
Yeah.
there's so many places that we had to kind of deconstruct and say, okay, we just came out with our new policy, training policy for our sales staff. If they're going to be posting pricing, they have to be certified. They need to be
Mm.
monitored by their sales manager. They have to take down inventory as it gets sold. And so you can't just have salespeople haphazardly posting offers on their feeds when it's not legal, because you're going to be held accountable to that as well. So it's not as hard for us on our website, as an example, and our advertising, to do the right thing, but it's looking around you and realizing, man, there's a lot of places that your inventory is being featured and pricing is being featured that you're responsible for, that you better
Yeah.
pay attention to. So don't forget to look at your salespeople. Don't forget to look at your third-party lead providers, your website providers, and anybody else out there that's putting prices up, because you're going to be responsible for that as well.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Great point. Yeah, and I do think that people are really paying attention to this now. It's like you said, this isn't the first time it's come up. It's been like an ongoing thing for a long time, and well, I think dealers have really started to get it together.
Yeah. We hope so, right? We hope so.
Okay, so just in parting thoughts and thinking about your next steps and initiatives and even things that you've experienced in the past that have really kind of gotten to you to maintain your level of leadership and your abilities, what's really something that you're focused on personally to better your performance and better your strategies and better your skill sets? What are you doing personally to stay relevant and to stay forward thinking and to continue to embrace yourself as, a learner of tomorrow, of today?
Yeah, I will tell you this, that I have more sleepless nights right now than I have had in a long time. And really it has to do with this idea of the changing landscape of selling automobiles to consumers. And, I think we fell behind a little bit, as we look at the success that Tesla's had and that Carvana's had and that these organizations that are selling vehicles online, I think that we would be lying to ourselves to say, listen, things aren't changing. They are changing. And we need to be adaptable. We talked about that earlier. We need to be willing to invest in our talent and the leadership in the organization to help us lead this change. We have to have a strategy. We have to look at, how are we going to approach these things? Where does the consumer see value and where are we not delivering on that promise? We've got to continue to invest in our OEM relations so that we're on the same page as it pertains to how we're going to adopt these technologies as they come through. There's so many technologies that are put onto the dealer and said, hey, here's what you need to do. And the stuff doesn't even work, right? So you're trying to integrate it into your processes. So those relationships and the vendors that we're able to use collaboratively, we need to work together. And, risk and compliance, it's a huge piece of what we're worried about and thinking about constantly is, okay, as we take in these new technologies and we're taking on new processes, where's the risk coming and what compliance do we need to be worried about in order to stay, legally compliant and keep ourselves out of hot water? Listen, most of the time, most of us that are auto dealers out there, we're good folks and we're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
We're not trying to lie, steal, and cheat, but you find yourself in situations like, oh my gosh, I've got an issue here. So we spend a lot of time in doing that. So I guess in all those areas, leadership, strategy, and growth, looking at, what capital are we going to allocate towards changing how we do things, making things frictionless, having people buy cars from you and deliver those vehicles to the consumer. I mean, for a lot of us, that's a completely foreign thought. And there may be some of your listeners like, oh my gosh, this guy in Podunk, Eastern Washington's not delivering vehicles. But, that's a real challenge for a lot of us that are out there. And so we need to be adaptable and be willing to take on those changes. And so that's what we're working on here. So, my attention stays on those things, our leadership's attention staying on those type of things. And I would think that the next year, there's going to be more changes than I would even venture to say in terms of how we're doing business. And so we got to be willing to take those things on.
Yeah, I like your message. Yeah. Be adaptable.
So that's the word of the year, 2027. Yeah.
I love it. It's real. It's relevant. Yeah. Well, John, thank you for sharing your experience, your perspective, your lessons, things that you've focused on and are navigating. And I really believe that our listeners are walking away with a whole lot of ideas here that they could immediately put into action, give a try, at least like toss around in a meeting and spur some new ideas and next steps. And that's really what I was hoping to gain. So thank you so much for your leadership and really being so, you're in such a high level, and I always appreciated you always staying so grounded. You're so easy to talk to.
Likewise, Jen, we thank you. Your services to our organization have been invaluable for multiple decades now. And so, we look forward to the next generation of whatever it is we're going to be doing. And thanks for what you bring to us as well.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, everyone. everyone, for listening to Dealer Talk with Jen Suzuki. Don't forget, my weekly live classes are designed to keep your team fired up, skilled up, and focused on results. Subscribe right now at edealersolutions.com.